All right, so today I'm just gonna do something a little simple, a little fun. Just gonna do a tier list of basically character action games. Even though it's a tier list of character action games, I put generally like a lot of just action games in general, just so that we get a wider pool of games. And I tried to make sure that generally each game is something worth talking about at the very least, right? So yeah, I do know that if you look at the lists at the bottom, right, like there are some crazy games if we're talking about character action games. But you know, I figured why not? The more the merrier, basically. So I already put the games that I haven't played and did not play. I'm gonna rank the games based on the character actionness of them. So even though something like Resident Evil 4 is a great game, one of my favorite games of all time, it's probably not gonna be put in S tier because as a character action game, like it really isn't a character action game, right? I just put it in there because why not? So, but I am gonna rank. I am gonna take into consideration the whole game. But okay, whatever. Scarlet Nexus. As a character action game, it doesn't have that many options. It's very animation based. The enemies aren't that fun to fight. There isn't a lot of feedback and the attacks they're gonna do and stuff like that. You're more playing this game for the story, the cutscenes. It's a long game too, but I mean it can be fun. It can be fun, with the psychokinesis or whatever, and you can chain the attacks together. Overall though, as a character action game, I'd probably give it a C or D. We'll give it a D. I'm gonna try to be pretty harsh because for most of these aren't actually character action games, so I'm gonna try to be pretty harsh. Sifu. I really like What's wrong? I really like Sifu. I got a review of it on the channel. One of the first videos I did. As a character action game, it's one of those things where it's very defensive heavy, right? Like you're doing a lot of hitting and a lot of like 1-2-1-2 dodge block, parry, stuff like that. It's not very like you can't really dictate the flow of combat. The combat's flow is very much set in stone. But that being said, it's still fun. I like the animations of it. It's got a nice flow, but as a character action game, I can't give it higher than a C. I just can't give it higher than a C. There is a good amount of moves you can use, but still it isn't as deep and as flexible as what we're looking for with these kind of games. So I'm gonna give it a C. The Callisto Protocol. This is not a character action game, but I put it in here because I wanted to talk about it a little bit. When it came out, everyone shat on it. They said it was the worst game ever. It's not Dead Space, even though it's the spiritual successor to Dead Space. Even though the creator of it said it's not the spiritual successor to Dead Space. All this stuff. As a action game, it does have a unique flow to it of hitting and aiming after the attack string to lock on and then shooting them, going for the tentacles so that they can't transform and get powerful. That being said, enemy variety very simple. There's guys that spit at you, there's guys that explode, and there's the basic guys. There's guys that take more hits because they're big, and that's basically it, right? There isn't a good amount of enemy variety. The gun variety is also very simple. There's basically two pistols, two shotguns, and one machine gun. Basically, that's basically the like gun kit, and there isn't anything unique. There isn't anything to unlock for completing the game on a high difficulty. For a character action game, even though I do think the game is better than what most people think, as a character action game, I'm gonna give it D. I'm gonna give it a D. We can't give it higher than a D. Devil May Cry 5. It's Devil May Cry 5. I think it's better than 4. It is, first of all, now with Virgil, there's 4 playable characters. I don't like playing as V. I never will like playing as V. His moveset is just so, his play style, I should say, is just too different from what I like playing, what I come to these games for. So I hate playing as V, but so when I'm talking about this game, I'm talking about Dante, Nero, and Virgil. The reason why I bring that up is when you play through the campaign, right? A big part of these games is the level design, because some of these games would be better if you actually fought more and instead of doing like random platforming or puzzles, right? So because of that, because there's 20% of missions are with V, I'm taking that into consideration. But even with that, this game, I think, really did a good job of kind of simplifying the game in a way so that it's more accessible, but also still being very complex and very flexible. And there's a lot of stuff you can do. There's a lot of moves. Dante in particular is insane in this game, and because of that, I think it has to go in S tier. It has to go in S tier. It's a Devil May Cry that the fans should like, and someone who has never played any of the games could hop into Devil May Cry 5, start playing, and be like, okay, like I get it, right? I kind of understand this. I think some of the older games have a little more of a barrier to entry because of some things like the enemy design, the level design. This is very straightforward. There's no annoying ass enemies, and yeah, it's Devil May Cry 5. It's in the S tier. Batman Arkham Knight. This is perfect example of what I just talked about with level design. The combat in this game is really, really good. The animations, the sound design, the details in the enemies, how they interact with each other while you're fighting. They'll like pick each other up, and they'll pick up weapons that other people dropped. The variety of them. There's guys with shields, guys that have a stun baton, so you have to jump over them. Bigger guys, you gotta stun them, right? The amount of enemy variety, adds variety to the gameplay in a good and fun way. On top of the spectacle, I should say, right? It's a very, very, very great combat system, and it's almost ahead of its time, because I think the Spider-Man games, they're trying to do a similar thing, but I don't think they're half as good as the Arkham Knight, and they're definitely half as mechanically deep, I'll say. So all that being said, right, this is a character action game tier list. There is a lot of driving the Batmobile, puzzle solving, detective mode, there's stealth sections. The amount of time you actually punch people and counter, it's probably less than half of the game, if we're going to include watching cutscenes as well. So, because of that, as a character action game, I'm going to give it a C. I'm going to give it a C. You know what? I'm going to give it a B, actually. I'm going to give it a B. I almost gave it a C, but the thing is, I think it's better than Sifu, the combat system. So that's why I gave it a B. But when we start ranking more games, it'll probably be low B, okay? But it really squeaked in there, is what I'm trying to say, because the combat system really is that good, and there's like 8 different playable characters as well that are pretty. They're not completely unique, but they're pretty unique to warrant trying them out. So B tier. I don't know if there's 8, but there's a few. Resident Evil 6. This game, man, the potential. I also have a video of this game on my channel. It is a game that has good bones, but everything surrounding the bones is flimsy, weak, trash, musty, grimy. It's leaky, okay? Like, it's not solid. I don't even know what I said, but the actual gameplay, shooting, sliding, the melee, it is a fun action game. But playing through the story, trash. And the only other way to engage in the combat besides the story is just a score attack mercenaries mode, right? So as a character action game, I can't give Resident Evil 6 You know, like there's no way I could give it a C, right? It has to go in D. It has to go in D. God of War, the very first God of War. I mean, it's definitely got its merits. It's one of those things where after playing 2 and 3, there's almost no reason to go back and play 1 unless you want to experience the whole series, right? But, it's still got that core God of War flavor. It's got the brutality, it's got the 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 exchange, which I think are just really fun weapons to use in an action game. But it is lesser than its sequels, so I'm gonna give it a C. I'm gonna give it a C. Kingdom Hearts 2. Damn. I don't know if I wanted to talk about Kingdom Hearts 2 this early. Kingdom Hearts 2 is one of my favorite games, maybe my favorite game of all time. I'm one of those guys. The reason why is the gameplay. I think it's something that, similar to the Devil May Cry series, it's something you can only get in Kingdom Hearts. Granted, it is a game, especially 2, where when you're playing it for the first time, or if you don't know and you play it on normal, it is easy to completely ignore a majority of the game's mechanics and just beat the game by mashing X. That being said, when you do dig a little deeper, start experimenting a little bit and understand how the game actually works, it is something that just feels like butter at all times. Sora just controls so smoothly. The moveset he unlocks with all his movement abilities and the way you can combine it with the actual combat, like you can really fling your, like there's a real weight and momentum to it. On top of that, it's very unique, like the command system, the way you access your moves. On top of that, it's a game that has magic in it from the Final Fantasy series, Magnet, fucking Thundara, Firaga. The magic are all different moves, some are projectiles, some are like a little flame shield, right? On top of things like limits, summons. But my favorite thing about Kingdom Hearts 2 is the drive forms. My favorite mechanic in a character action game in general is the idea of like a rage mechanic, right? You do good or you do damage, you get hit, a bar fills up, you hit 2 buttons, and then you get a cool move set and you're like powered up, right? Those are generally my favorite mechanics in action games. I don't know why, it's just something that, like, if a game has a rage mechanic, I'm probably gonna like it. Kingdom Hearts 2 probably has maybe the best rage mechanic, because it's not technically like a rage mechanic, but the drive forms are basically a rage mechanic. It might have the best form of that in a game. The drive forms, besides Valor becomes pretty obsolete by the time you reach the end of the game, but all of them, they're unique. They add a new flavor to the game, and you can have your favorites. Some people like Wisdom, some people like Master. Some people really like Valor, and then they use it even though it's not really that good. But it is a game that has the flexibility and nuance that you would want in a character action game. But compared to something like Devil May Cry 5, right? Where does it rank? Also has really good boss fights. I'm gonna give it an A. I can't give it an S, even though I kind of want to. I'm gonna give it an A, and I think that's a great spot for Kingdom Hearts 2. I think that's fair. I'm pretty sure that's fair. Nier Automata. I probably played this game for like 15-20 hours. I didn't beat the whole thing. I'm sorry. Now, that being said, we're talking about the combat. We're talking about like, I'm not, maybe I'm crazy. I think this game's a little overrated. Call me crazy. I don't know, but like people act like this shit's the bee's knees. It's it's good. I haven't played it in a little bit, granted, but I do remember the combat and it it having a good feel. Like the animations are good, the like effects are good, the hit stun are good, but it didn't have the same amount of flexibility or like, I don't know, like robustness, I guess you should say, as something like Devil May Cry 5 or even something like Bayonetta, which is, another platinum game. The way it didn't feel very, I don't even know how to fucking explain it. It didn't feel very coherent, But that being said, it is a game that's more, praised for its story. And I will say it also has really good music. Really good fucking music. But this one's a doozy. This one's a doozy because I know that if I were to give it more of a chance, I could maybe find more to like, like maybe there is more to dig into, and I'm just not really being fair. But as a character action game, I feel like a B is fair. I feel like a B is fair. Maybe some of you think it should be an A, maybe some of you think it should be an S. I think a B is fair. I think B is fair for Nier Automata. Ninja Gaiden 2. Ninja Gaiden 2 and Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2, because these two versions are actually pretty different. Now, listen. There are people that will probably say this is one of the best character action games of all time. And I'm inclined to agree. It is something that, like Devil May Cry, like Kingdom Hearts, like it's something that is very special and unique. Now, when we talk about character action games, the things that are most important, the level design, right? Like, how often am I actually fighting, basically? The level design, the combat, how, the moveset, how many moves, and something that can often get overlooked is the presentation, the graphics, Is it satisfying when you hit them with the fucking sword, basically? The animations. Ninja Gaiden basically maxes out those three stats and just kind of like evens out on like everything else, I would say. It's a game where there's an insane amount of moves. There's 4 or 5 different weapons, maybe more. If we're talking about Sigma, all with an insane amount of moves. The like technicality of it, the nuance, like the deeper mechanics of it. It's basically like a fighting game, right? Like there's stuff like block buffer, like you are kind of trying to discern, are you in an advantage, disadvantage, as you're trying to like move around, as you're blocking moves. It's something that I think for a character action game, it's gotta go in S tier. It has to go in S tier. I think the Ryu is also just super badass. I just think he's just mad badass. And yeah, like if I feel like it's also the dismemberment system, the way that, and it's also a game that is hard for the right reasons. Like the enemies all attack you at once. Sometimes it's a little cheap. But for the most part, they attack you all at once, because when you really learn how to play the game, you are able to block and dodge everything. Guaranteed. If you combine jumping on top of enemies, if you combine charging up your power moves to do the super attacks, if you use your block buffer, if you use your dash, which has invincibility frames, if you stay mobile on top of picking smaller battles well and picking people off, picking out the ranged enemies first, when it's all working and it's flowing and you're like, oh shit, like it is something that just feels amazing. It feels amazing. And these versions are pretty different. I'm not gonna get into it, but I'd say both versions are yeah. So that's why they're up there. Darksiders 2. Um, I mean, it is a game that has like that kind of action game feel. Like it's got like quick and fast movement. It's got some slick animations, but it's more of a action RPG. It's got a lot of puzzle solving. There's kind of dungeons. It's an open world ish game too. Um, I will say though, the combat is funner than something like Scarlet Nexus. You know, so I don't know if I could put it in D, but it's probably gonna be in low C. It's probably gonna be in a low C. Kingdom Hearts, the first one, not as good as the second one in my opinion, but this is like the birth of like action RPGs basically. Like an action game that's like an RPG, like whoa, like you level up and you're swinging a sword. Like it was kind of. I mean, Tales did come out, but Tales has been like was out, but I feel like this is like the real like origin of it in a way. It's not as good as 2. Is it funner than something like Sifu or God of War or Darksiders? I would say. And is it more worth playing? I would say yes, Kingdom Hearts 2 is a B. This might be a little biased. I'm gonna admit, me putting Kingdom Hearts 2 in B might be a little biased, but I think it's a good character action. I'll say. Devil May Cry, the first one. I played this a little bit ago. Maybe like 2-3 years ago. Maybe I could have played all these games before hitting a brush up my memory. I did for a few, and I watched some like YouTube videos to make sure like I could actually fucking give an opinion. But Devil May Cry, it's a little stiff. Like you can tell it's the first Devil May Cry, right? This game actually was originally gonna be, I think, a Resident Evil game, but then somewhere along the way it became an action game, and you can kind of tell, all the corridors are pretty tight, like it's very claustrophobic, and there is multiple weapons, but again, it's obviously not as good as 3 or 4 or 5. It's the very first Devil May Cry, but it is still worth playing. It is definitely got its merit. If you've played the others, you should probably play the first one. So I'd put it in B. I'd put it in B. Definitely. If we're looking for character action games too, Devil May Cry is way more of an action game than something like Darksiders 2 or God of War, right? So I think B is fair. Resident Evil 4. I mean, again, it's a great game. Like if this was a game ranking, I'd put it in S tier. But this is a character action game ranking. So as a character action game, I mean, it has great level design. You can, there is a good amount of, flexibility choice, in what weapons you bring. There's a good variety of weapons. There's a level of mastery and getting the headshots, getting the stuns, then, the knife management. A character action game, though. I think, call me crazy, we're gonna have to give Resident Evil 4 like a B. Call me crazy. I think we're gonna have to give Resident Evil 4 like at least a B, because I can't put Resident Evil 4 in C. That just don't even look right. Is it a character action game? Technically, probably not, but I think it should be a B. Maybe I'm biased. God of War 2. This game, ahead of its time. I think so. The only thing with it is a PS2 game, right? Like when you switch weapons, can you do it on the fly? Am I bugging? I don't think you can. No, you can't. When you switch weapons, it's still through a pause menu, but it does. It is a better version. It is like that God of War that you're looking for. It's got the spectacle. All the boss battles are really good, and this is where they really started to hone in on their design in terms of like, you know, the special moves with block and the power attacks, the grabs. This is where it all really started to get polished and focused. The animations are really good. There's a way bigger budget than the first one. As a character action game, I also think it has good level design. There are puzzles in it, but I don't think any puzzle is hard or lasts too long, as far as I can remember. Character action game. I think I could give it a B. We can't give it an A. We can't give it an A, but I think it's a solid character action game, right? Like if you're looking for that experience of mixing and matching different moves, dodging and blocking, it is a game worth playing, right? It does have, you know, that aspect to it. So I'm gonna give it a B. I'm gonna give it a B. Sonic Unleashed. Okay. You know, obviously the Werehog. I'm not talking about the day stages, right? I'm talking about the Werehog. You know. To be fair, you know, you can you can cancel animations, you know, with the block. It's got there's a large move set. The enemy variety isn't crazy. You know, you can kind of just mash your way through every single enemy. Like there isn't like a lot of specific enemy types. Again, call me crazy. It's got good platforming. It's got all right platforming as the Werehog. But again, right? How much are you playing as the Werehog? Definitely, it's like more than the daytime stages. Probably, you know, the daytime stages go by in like 3, 4, 5 minutes. The Werehog stages last like 25 to 30. I think no, I'm kidding. I'm gonna give it a C. You know, I think people hate on this game way too much. You know, it's not actually like a character action game, but it's a fun little God of War clone. You know, I think people give this game way too much shit. Right now the one problem is, you know, the only way I can play this through a PlayStation 3, which sucks because it runs like ass. But besides that, I think it looks good in C. Star Wars: The Force Unleashed, the first one. I played this a little, not that long ago, maybe a few months ago on my PS3, and it's a fun little God of War clone. I will say the like Star Warsness of it, you know, like the way the force powers work on the enemies, you know, like the ragdolls, the fact that you have the fucking Sith lightning. It does kind of add to the game in a way, in like a weird way. It makes it a little unique. But as a character action game, I'll give it a C. You know, I'm kind of talking up my ass here because I haven't like played this game in like all the way through in like a long time, but I'll give it a C. I feel like a C feels about right. No More Heroes, the first one. I played this one not that long ago when it came out for the Switch. This is a game that, you know, there isn't a crazy amount of moves. It's very like Muso gaming. I like very like square basically. But you know, there's a little bit of flexibility. You know, there's a little bit of nuance, but not that much in the first one. So as a character action game, I really can't give the very first No More Heroes more than like a D. Maybe that's a little bit harsh because I think the game is really good. I think the story's good, the voice acting's funny. I think it's unique, but as a character action game, you know, like for what we're really looking for, it really doesn't have that nuance. You know, it really doesn't. So, Devil May Cry 3. I mean, I'm gonna talk about it, but it's an A. It's not an S, but it's an A. This is where Devil May Cry basically became Devil May Cry. This is where, you know, they started to really hone in on mixing and matching not just your sword combos, but a variety of mechanics, you know, mixing and matching the different styles, you know, Trickster, Royal Guard, Swordmaster, you know, having the different guns, having the different melee weapons, and being able to switch on the fly. This is where jump canceling, I don't know if that was in the other ones, but this is where Devil May Cry basically became Devil May Cry 5. Great boss battles, good enemy design. Besides that one like centipede flying boss battle, that shit's ass. It has Virgil as a playable character, 2 playable characters. Virgil's fun to use. It's Devil May Cry 3. I think it belongs in A tier. I think that's a very good spot to put Devil May Cry 3. Maybe some people would put it in S tier. Also good story. Good story, but you know, A tier looks good to me. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. This is another game that is pretty unique. The dismemberment, I guess, mechanic, you know, like the way you can cut people apart, the way you can cut enemies apart, it's very cool. And you know, doing that strategically to actually, you know, win boss fights, or you know, hit the thing so you can get the healing, it is unique in that way, right? Like it does have its own like flair to it, but there are some elements to it that's like, as a character action game, like why when you equip a new weapon does it not have its own moveset? The only weapon that has like its very own unique moveset is the sword. So like when you use other weapons, it feels like you're playing a jank version of the game, because it's like you like swing, and then you hit triangle and you pull out a different weapon that has its own moveset, instead of like you just have a new weapon that has its own square and triangle move. Like I don't know, like maybe I'm crazy, but that's the thing I don't like. And I do like the parry. I like, you know, the way it works. You know, it seems easy at first. Just, you know, press up and square at the same time. It's like, oh, okay. But the timing, maybe I'm a bitch. I feel like the timing is very strict, especially to get the actual parry hit move. Maybe I just suck, but like I feel like trying to consistently stand your ground and parry in the game is almost impossible. So with all that said, I feel like some people would put it in the S tier, but I'm gonna put it in A. Bayonetta, the first Bayonetta. This is another game that has, man, Bayonetta. As a character action game, it's got the complexity, right? It's got the huge moveset. It's got multiple weapons. You can switch between the 2 different weapon sets on the fly. But I don't even know. It's kind of a weird feeling. Maybe it's the enemy design combined with the level design, combined with certain mechanics. I don't know. It's another game where you can master it and become really, really good, but it almost is hard. It's almost really hard to be consistent. Again, I'm talking on my ass a little bit, because I have played, like I have booted up this game a lot of times, because it's like, it's Bayonetta, right? Like everyone loves Bayonetta, and try to play it. But every time I kind of like just wane off after the first few levels, and I can't really explain why. That being said, I can't give it a C. So it's basically between A and B. We're gonna give Bayonetta B. We're gonna give Bayonetta a B. B for Bayonetta. Maybe that's a little harsh, because I haven't maybe fully committed to becoming a master at the game's mechanics and really, you know, learning the ins and outs. But I've tried. Trust me, I've tried. So I'm gonna give it a B. Dante's Inferno. This is basically just a God of War clone. Very simple, but another game where you can block cancel. You know, you can jump cancel. So you know, it's a little bit of tech, but it is very generic. It's very simple. Very square, 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 triangle, square, 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 triangle, square, 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 square. You know, it's one of those games. So I can give it a C. I can give it a C. We don't gotta be too crazy with it. God of War 3. This is a game. It's the best of the God of War trilogy. You know, not like the new God of Wars. I mean, I like 3 more than the rest. 3 is probably my favorite. It's the best of, you know, the classic God of War style. And another game that is very fun from start to finish, right? The one problem with it is you can't skip cutscenes. But besides that, you start the game, you immediately start fighting people, and that's basically all the way through. You know, I feel like this game has even less puzzles than the second one, but there is like one little section. You got the fucking cup, and you can like alter the fucking dimensions or whatever, and you gotta line it up. But there's only like one section, right? It's from basically you just fight your way through. The reason why I love this game, the spectacle, the level design, just basically running through the game, but also the set pieces and the bosses. Every single boss in this game is great. Every single one. And that's something that is kind of hard for a character action game. Like, it's really hard to really nail every boss fight in the sense of like the like sense of scale, the like weight, you know, the like reward, you know, you get a new weapon after killing every boss fight super unique, and it's got its own set pieces and cool moments, and it's a game that's fun. You can switch weapons on the fly with the weapon attack. There's a lot of cancels, a lot of variety of moves. There's good enemy design, not the best, you know, like not the craziest amount of enemy design, but a good variety. Only problem is there's no new game plus. Again, it's a great game, and it's a great character action game too, I would say, but it's not an S tier, just because a few little hiccups here and there, and it's still, you know, it isn't as complex as something like Devil May Cry 5 or Ninja Gaiden 2, right? So we're gonna give God of War 3 an A. We're gonna give God of War 3 an A. I feel like that's fair. No bullshit. I would put that in did not play. I've really played that. Castlevania. This is like a straight God of War clone. You know, like even like the weapon that you use, it's like a whip. You know, so I mean, I don't know if that takes points away, but what can I say about Castlevania? It's a very 7 out of 10 game, and a very 5 out of 10 character action game, right? It's got very like annoying level design, like just puzzles in the middle of it, just a lot of sections where you don't fight and shit. And the fighting's okay, like it's alright, like it's very like by the books. No bullshit. I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna give it a D. No bullshit. I'm gonna give it a D. Just the last time I played it, I don't remember having the best time. Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 2. Now, this game, pretty solid if we're just looking at it based on the character action, you know, part of it, right? It's a very short game. It's like 4 or 5 hours. You can fly through it, and the story's not that good, but the combat, it's fun, just because of how OP you are, basically. You know, the force push really sends people flying. You can pick people up, electrocute them, throw them at another person. It's like a shock bomb. You know, there is a good amount of variety, and the system with the lightsaber combo. So square and triangle will give you lightsaber lightning moves, and square and circle will give you like lightsaber force moves, and it's pretty good. You know, there's dash attacks, there's a parry, there's a few enemy, you know, there's a little bit of enemy variety. I feel like it's better than the first one, but I don't know if I can put it in B, because it isn't really polished, is what I'll say. Like, it isn't a very polished game, is its problem. So we'll put it in C, but we'll put it in high C. We'll put it in high C. Devil May Cry 4. Okay, listen. I love Devil May Cry. I love all of them, except for 2 because I haven't played it. Devil May Cry 4 is a game that is held back immensely, greatly, by its level design. If it was a game where a majority of the levels were just you running down a hallway and going in a room and then getting blocked off and then fighting an enemy and then going through a hallway and then just rinse and repeat, again, people would knock it for being repetitive, but that would still be better than what we actually got. Okay? Fucking mazes where you gotta go through different portals in the right order through trial and error, and fucking you gotta hit this gyro to speed it up and then hit it and move it and hit obstacles, and the fucking levels themselves are confusing and sometimes you don't know where to go, and it's just like, whoa, like you guys should have really fucking toned it down. And on top of that, the enemy design is very annoying. Like, maybe I suck, but a lot of the enemies are just unfun to fight. Like, there's guys with shields that you gotta really get behind, and if you hit them too many times, they'll ping and then counter you. There's the fucking little plant things that if they get on an enemy, then while you're hitting that enemy that's been taken over, like they just got like an invulnerability thing where they just swing a sword on you and like it could just break your combo. There's fucking this crazy lightning monster that your hits clank off of because and he teleports around the map and he's super crazy. Like he's like a mini boss, but like crazy enemy design. Like really, really hard. So it's one of those games where like, again, if you really sit there and you master its mechanics and you learn the ins and outs of the enemy design and you get and you play through the game enough to the point where the levels don't bother you because you can just go through them quickly, yeah, it's a great character action game, but that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff you gotta go through. So because of that, I'm gonna give it a B. I'm gonna give it a B. You know, maybe that's blasphemous. A Devil May Cry game, not an A tier and a character action tier list, but you know, I already have 1 in here, but I feel like 4, it's got a lot of really, really bad flaws that are counterintuitive to a character action game that really get in the way of the character action. So I gotta put it in B. Sengoku Basara 4. This is a Musou game, but this is one of the few Musou games that actually has a little nuance to it. You know, it has a good skill system, and there's like 40 to 50 playable characters, and every single one plays differently, which is why it's a great action game. It's also a game that's very level based, so you just boot up a level and you get to fighting. You know, you can skip all the cutscenes. It's not ported or anything. This is only in Japanese. I got the Japanese version digitally on my PS5, so I skip all the cutscenes. As an action game, I think it's really fun. I think it's a little unique in the fact that it is a Musou game that has way more depth than your average Musou game. You can switch characters on the fly. There's a lot. Again, all the characters are very nuanced, and you're bound to find multiple that are really fun. That like, there's like grapplers. Like it's a really well designed game. You know, it's got that Capcom polish to it basically. Even though it's a Musou game, so it looks very button mashy. So I'm gonna give Sengoku Basara a B. I can't give it an A, even though I do like it a lot, but I'm gonna give it a B. Vanquish. This is a unique game. You know, it does have the elements of a character action. It's got the style. It's got it's got a gameplay system that you really do need to master. It's got nuance, and also the levels are really fun to go through, I would say. But it, you know, compared to something like Kingdom Hearts, Devil May Cry, you know, games where you swing your sword, as a character action game, how high can I rank? Again, I do think it's a great game, and it's very unique, but I can't give it higher than a B. You know what? Because B's getting a little full. You know, I don't want to just give everything a B. But is C? Nah, Vanquish and C just doesn't look right. I'm gonna put it in B. I'm gonna put it in B. Even though B's looking a little fat right now, I'm gonna put it in B. DMC Devil May Cry. The bad Devil May Cry, basically. Even though 2 is the worst one. The updated version of it that they did, where they took out the fucking blue, red and blue system, made the game a little better. They did a few things when they updated it, and that version is the version that most people are gonna play when they play the game. But it's still not Devil May Cry. Don't get it twisted. It is a hollow imitation. It's way too animation based, is the best way I'll put it. Enemy design is not that fun, and it doesn't have that flow and momentum that you really look for in these kinds of games. It's fake. It's fake in that way. Like, I'm gonna give it a C. It's not a great character action game. Lollipop Chainsaw. You know what? I honestly shouldn't even rank this game because I've only played it for like an hour. So, Transformers Devastation. I've played this game for like 3 hours. So I feel like I get the gist of it. Another Platinum game. Another unique sense. A unique game in the sense that the IP combined with the genre. I think it's very unique. Like a Transformers character action game made by Platinum Games. Like, whoa, you know, like that's very unique. So it's got that going for it. It's got the same mechanics as Bayonetta. You dodge and slow down time, but it's also got this transform mechanic, right? Like at the end of your combos, you can do like a transform attack, and there's multiple playable characters, but there's also multiple different weapons, and all the different characters can use different weapons. I feel like that kinda, I would prefer if each character had its own unique moveset, but the flexibility is still nice because each character does still have their unique nuances and gimmicks to them. So, as a character action game, no bullshit, we're gonna give it a B. We can't give it an A because it is a kind of smaller experience. Like, the story is short, and then after that, like, it's basically about doing like missions and just replaying the story. And it still isn't as deep or complex as Kingdom Hearts 2, Devil May Cry 3, even God of War maybe. So I'll give it a B. Doom Eternal. This is a very unique case because is this a character action game, right? I mean, it does have flexibility that, you know, that nuance. I'm gonna keep saying that because I feel like that's the best way to describe these kinds of games, because you can't really know a character action game is good or not until you play it. A character action game is the kind of game where you have to feel it before you really know, is it great. And Doom Eternal does have that feeling. It has that nuance in the sense that there is a high skill ceiling. You know, first there's weapon switching. Okay, then you get that. Okay, you get weapon switching down. Then there's managing your resources. You know, the 2 different kind of bombs, the fucking sword, the blood punch, the flamethrower. You know, there's the different mods. There's what kind of mods do you like on your weapons? You know, do you like the micro missiles or the precision shot on the fucking machine gun? You know, do you like the shield or the fucking super overdrive shot on the fucking minigun, right? It has a lot of aspects of a character action game, and it does them very well. Great level design too. You know, it's just very, very straightforward, very linear, in a good way. Call me crazy. Call me crazy. We're putting Doom Eternal in A. I feel like it is a first-person shooter, and when you think about character action games, you generally do not think of first-person shooters. But as a character action game, you know, what really defines a character action game? Is it really the fact that you can swing a sword? I don't know. So I'll give it an A. You know, I feel like it deserves an A. Ninja Gaiden 3. Very hard game. Very hard game. Sadly, it's still built off the bones of a really, really bad game. Ninja Gaiden 3 is not a good game. And because of that, there are aspects to it that are just trash. Like, the level design, it has these really flimsy sections in it. Like, where, like, quick time events and just, like weird mechanic where you gotta climb with the kunai. And the boss fights are ass. Like, every single boss fight is ass. I haven't beat the game, but I've played, like, 5-6 hours. And I've fought, like, 5 or 6 bosses. And each one was ass. Including that big-ass dinosaur. So, but at the same time, it does build off Ninja Gaiden 2 in a way. You know, there's more move sets for all the weapons that were in 2. There's more move sets. There's more moves. There's a little bit more enemy variety, I guess you could say, because there's enemies from 2, but new enemies from 3. It is technically just Ninja Gaiden 2 with a different coat of paint, but with a few added mechanics to it. But at the same time, it's streamlined in a way that I feel like detracts from the character action experience, especially with like the fucking dodge and do a heavy attack and you instantly kill someone, and then you can chain that into fucking killing like 3 people. The fucking charge move is OP in this game, so I can't give it an A. But I can give it a B. I think it's a B. Tales of Graces F. This game, one of my favorite games of all time. It's part of a series of games, the Tales of series. They're all action RPGs, but I feel like this one is the most nuanced. That's probably not true, technically. I feel like Berseria is probably the most nuanced, but Graces F is nuanced, but it's more put together. I feel like it was more thought out than the rest of the series. So, as a character action game, it does have the nuance, it does have the depth, but not as much as you would want from Devil May Cry 5, Kingdom Hearts 2. Actually, even, I don't know, I mean, there's more moves in Graces F than Kingdom Hearts 2. Like, there's more unique moves. But again, it's not like command inputs. It's all just X and circle, you know, X and hold left, circle and hold right. You know, there isn't back forward X, fucking hold back, hold, you know, there's no charge moves, right? So it's simple in that sense. But the flow and feeling, and like I said, like the weight and the movement, and it has this sense of like grace almost, you know, Tales of Graces. But I do feel like for a character action game, it's really good. It's an RPG, so you can basically fight as much as you want. Granted, if you're playing it for the first time and you watch all the cutscenes, that is gonna be a big break in between gameplay. But you can also skip them whenever you want. So that's a weird conundrum there. I wanna put it in A because I feel like it is as deep and complex as something like Kingdom Hearts or Metal Gear Rising or maybe even Devil May Cry 3. But it's also a JRPG. Like, you know, it's not trying to be a character action game. It has this whole other element that isn't character action, you know, it's watching cutscenes, it's, you know, leveling up and you know, shit like that. So I'm gonna give it a B. I feel like B's good. You know what? I'm gonna put it in A, but we'll put it in low A. This is definitely a biased one, 100%. But everyone should play this game, so I'm gonna put it in A. Resident Evil 5. I mean, I put Resident Evil 4 and 6 in here, so I felt like I had to put 5. But I feel like 5 isn't as arcadey as 4. So I don't think it's as good in the character action department. It's also got some crazy level design towards the end. I can't put it in B or something, so I gotta put it in C. But I think it's a fun game, especially if you got someone that you can play with who is on the like same wavelength. They like these kind of games. It's still a good game, so I'll put it in C. I'll put it in C. The Last of Us Part 2, man. Whoa, The Last of Us Part 2. I think, first of all, I mean, let's talk about the game in general. I think the game's great. Horrible pacing, a few weird decisions, a few contrivances, but I think overall it's a little overhated. Overall, but the combat system, I do think that I don't think it's character action levels of deep, but I do think for a third person shooter, it does have a little bit of nuance, you know? I think the different throwables, I think the melee, the melee combat and having to dodge, I think grabbing enemies, the stealth, all that, like it is a well put together gameplay combat system. But again, is it really character action? Definitely not. So because of that, we're gonna put The Last of Us 2 in C tier for character action. I think the game isn't a C tier game, but we'll put it in C for character action. Kingdom Hearts 3. Okay, not as good as 2, but over the years it's grown on me with the Remind update, with experimenting with its mechanics a little bit more. It's grown on me, but I'll say it's floaty. It's still too floaty, and Sora is, there's too many enemies. There's too many, and there's too many enemies that are off screen and hitting you with long range attacks and can't see it. Like there's just a lot, there's not that polish that was in 2 is my problem with 3. And I don't like the Keyblade forms. I don't like Keyblade forms as much as dry forms. So even though Kingdom Hearts 2 is an A, but the Remind did add cool bosses, but you gotta basically get to the end of the game to get to those. I kind of want to put it in B, but I feel like I gotta put it in C. Like it doesn't have that polish that me personally is looking for in a character action game. But I do think it's a fun game. I really do. X-Men Origins Wolverine, one of the few good licensed movie games. I've come back to this game a few times over the years. I think it is generally a good game. I think there's a good amount of moves, and I think the gore in the game, like the way Wolverine breaks down when he takes damage, I think that shit's really cool. And there's a good weight to the gameplay. Like it's very meaty. Like you really do feel like you're Wolverine hacking up dudes, right? There's air combos, it's got a rage mechanic, I'm pretty sure, but again, it's more of a God of War type clone, and it's still lesser than God of War. So it's not nothing crazy, but I think I can give the game a B. Especially if you get the PC version, you can play it at like 60 frames or some shit. Again, maybe this is a little too high, but I think it's an alright character action game. Onechunbara Origins. This is a game where on the surface it looks like just like bait, like anime, like trash basically, but it is an action game that did, think about its mechanics, and there's parries and there's well-timed mechanics where you have to time your square and push to get the full combo. So it is a character action game through and through, but it isn't polished, like at all. Like this game is way less polished, I would say, than a lot of these games on this list almost. So just for that reason alone, I gotta give it a C. But if you're itching for that character action game and you've run out and you like anime, maybe you don't mind the fucking anime girls, maybe you like the anime girls, I'd say it's still worth playing. So that's why I'll put it in C. Yakuza Kiwami 2. The Yakuza games are kind of like more traditional almost beat 'em ups. You know, like they're not really like character action games, right? But they are action games, and they do have, you know, combat systems and combos and shit like that. But as a character action game, right? First of all, you're gonna spend a lot of time not actually fighting, a lot of dialogue to read, a lot of cutscenes to watch, a lot of side quests to do, there's a lot of mini games and shit. Like, it isn't focusing in on the character action side. But I do really like the gameplay in the Yakuza series. I think it's one of those things that feels really hard to like get a handle of when you first start playing. Like, it feels super stiff, almost like you can't really move. But once you learn the, you know, to dodge and maneuver and learn the little nuances, I think it becomes pretty fun. So I'll put Yakuza Kiwami 2 in C. And all of what I said to Yakuza basically applies to Judgment, but Judgment actually focuses on the character action a little bit more. I think they did a lot more to the combat to make it more deep, basically. Like, so, and it's more action focused. Period. So I'll give Judgment a B. And the last game, Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise, another Yakuza type game, but it uses the Fist of the North Star license. I've seen the movie OVA. Like, I like the series, but I like it from like a very surface level perspective. Like, I just think Kenshiro is cool. I think that the time period's cool. I think the art style is pretty cool. This game, as a Yakuza spin-off, it does a good job of mixing that kind of beat 'em up, you know, one-on-one action style gameplay. It does a good job of mixing that with the Fist of the North Star license. Like, Kenshiro does feel as mobile and powerful as he does in the show, even in this Yakuza style combat system. All the hate moves are cool. You got Omae wa mo Shinderu, you know, like that's in the game. So because of that, I feel like you gotta give it a B. So this is the tier list. Let me try and see if anything's, you know, a little unbalanced, maybe. You know, nah, Force Unleashed is too high. Force Unleashed is too high for the C tier. We'll put Kingdom Hearts 3 at high C. Yeah, Devil May Cry. Yep. Yeah, that looks about right. Yep, everything. No bullshit. For a character action tier list, this looks really solid. I think this looks really solid. I don't think I was too biased. I don't think I was too lenient with anything. I feel like I really gave the games a good, you know, like score, you know, like a good standing. I feel like I really ranked them properly. So that's the definitive character action game tier list. I made this tier list myself. I'll link it in the description if anyone else wants to do it, share it. And yeah, that's the video. Thanks for watching.